So today we will be taking the second part of book 4, chapter 3, and inshallah we'll be continuing Roman villas. And we will be seeing the archaeological, art, and architectural evidences of Roman villas that remains until today. So from this part, if we go into reading in detail, there are many things that we'll have to remember, but I'm going to summarize everything for you, so it will be as easy as possible. And inshallah, it's not going to be difficult. So first of all, we are going to see what is the art evidences left now, what are the archaeological evidences left now, and then we are going to compare and see how is the literature evidences is matching with the archaeological finds, and how is the art evidences matching with the archaeological finds, like what they have found and what is said in the literature. Are they matching what they have actually found in the Roman villas now? Is it actually matching in the art that is being portrayed? That is what this section is all going to be about. And let's get started. So here we're going to see the first part, and that is art, that how it was portrayed. Here it is an introduction. We will read through it, but basically it is saying that the archaeological al-athar, there are no much archaeological remains left that could be utilized to study from and to understand more about Roman villas. What is left is very less, and it is all about the big, it is left from the big expensive villas of rich people, of the higher class, of the upper class people. So we are going to read through it. The literary passage you have just read have their own different emphasis, but taken together construct a picture of the villa as a retreat from the city, a place where rich and educated Romans could enjoy intellectual pursuits and the beauties of nature. Before I start with this part, I would just like to summarize everything that we took last time. So when we go further, you will be able to connect the points. So we saw above, there are two types of leisure for Roman people. One was the public leisure, and then there's the private leisure. Now, public leisure is where the upper class people had to go, even though they liked it or they did not like it, they had to attend it. Like there was the gladiator combats, there were the games in the arenas, there was the chariot racing. These were all kind of public leisure activities that rich people had to attend to, even if they did not like it. This was to show their status, that they are of a higher status. So second, we are going to see the literary, the private leisure is the Roman villas, where these rich people, these upper class people, they went to their villas where they could spend their leisure time in peace and in quiet and in whatever they would want to do. So we have literary pieces from three famous people. One is Horace. Horace is a very well-known poet in literature. He is having a big name, and he was there during the time when there was the Battle of Actium between between Mark Antony and between Octavian. So Horace, he was taking side of Mark Antony, and when Mark Antony lost and Octavian became the Augustus, he became the emperor, the ruler emperor of Rome. Horace, he lost his lands, he lost his property, he lost his everything, and he had to start working in order to earn a living. So when he was working, he became quite famous for his poetic skills. And there was this one famous guy. He was famous at that time, and he was of a really high class. and he was the confidant of Octavian. A confidant means he was a secret holder of Octavian, and he was a guider of an advisor of Octavian. So he was a very close person of Octavian, and his name was Maecenas. So Maecenas was very close to Octavian, and he heard about Horace. He heard about his poetic skills, and he loved it. So what did Maecenas do? Maecenas, he gifted Horace with a villa, and Horace was really very happy with it, and he was really grateful because he lost all his property and he got a villa from Maecenas, and he spent his time over there. He spent his time with his friends, and for him, for Horace, a villa was a place away from the city sickness, away from all the frustration, all the stress of the city, and it was a place where he could spend his time without thinking that he has to please someone, he has to do something to impress somebody. He just does things to impress himself, and he does things just for himself. And he spent time with his friends talking about philosophy, about literature, about things they liked, and not about things that is going to make them more frustrated. um, he always thanked, he even in his poems he thanked Maecenas, and he actually celebrated the victory of Octavian the emperor in his poems. And that was it about Horace, that he was really happy about his villa. Horace's villa was a working villa. It was not the very high class villa. It was a working villa where he had to do some work, where there were so many other people, other workers who were working over there for Horace. But still, Horace, even though if it was not a high class villa, at the end it was a villa, and Horace said that it would be foolish if I asked for more. So he was really happy with his villa. Then, and according to him, villa was the place where he could be away from all the city sickness, from all the city stress and frustrations, and it was a place where he could spend his time doing the things he loved the most. Now, second is about another famous person. His name is Statius. Now, Statius was in Rome at a time where there was a different emperor. And the emperor's name was Domitian. Now, Domitian, he was a very strict and he was not a good ruler. He was not nice to his people, and he was really jealous. He wanted all the good things for himself. He wanted people to see him as the richest, as the most high class, and that he's having the best and the best of the things. So it was really, really a difficult period for the upper class people, because if they did something, if they portrayed themselves as rich, or if they portrayed themselves of of their class, of their villas, if they had good villas, good houses in the town near to the emperor, they would be in great trouble. So at that time, most of the upper class people purposefully they went into exile. They left the town and they went to the countryside in their villas, away from the town, away from the emperor, away from the court. So they could, if every step that the upper class people took, should have been very careful, because if anything they did, any small thing that could offend the emperor, they would have been in a great trouble. So they retreated themselves. They went in their own villas in the countryside, where they could not come on the way of the emperor, and they spent their leisure time over there. They spent their life over there, their luxurious life over there. Now, Statius, he said all these. He said that at that time, he stayed in his villa because he wanted to stay away from the path of Domitian. He did not want to fall in the wrong books of Domitian. He did not wanted to get punished for being rich or for being luxurious. So he said that at that time, in the period of when Domitian was the emperor, it was the villas was a place of retreating, a safe house where you could stay safe and away from the emperor. So this is what Statius told about the villa in the period of Domitian, and it's very small part for Statius. And then there is third, and that is Pliny the Younger. Now, Pliny the Younger, he wrote all his life, about all his life and everything, all, his political activities, his political life, his social life, his private life, everything he documented in letters. So he wrote letters, and he made sure that the letters portray him very nicely, and he wrote all the letters about all everything that he did. So these letters were a great source of evidence of how villas were at that time, and about Pliny the Younger. Now, Pliny the Younger, he had an uncle, and his name was Pliny the Elder. And Pliny the Younger, he inherited all the property from his uncle, that was Pliny the Elder, and he was really rich, and he was of really high class. He had a lot of property, and he had good family links, good family relationships with other people, and he was pretty famous, and he had a place in the municipality, aristocratic. He was in the aristocrat municipality. He had a position over there, and he was working. Even though he was working in town, the house that he had in the town in Rome, he was also there in the time when Domitian was there. By the way, so Pliny the Younger, the house that he had in the town, it was a normal house. It was not luxurious at all. It did not show any kind of luxury. It was a normal house, because he did not wanted to offend the emperor, and he served under the emperor, and then he left. He used to go outside in the country, where he had other big villas, beautiful villas, much more luxurious villas, where he spent his time over there. And he was really happy over there. He was a copy of his uncle. He was walking in the footpath of his uncle. He was really studious. He was very smart and intelligent. And the villa of Horace was called the Sabine Hills Villa, and the villa of Pliny is called the Laurentian. Let me just check the name correctly, because I forgot. Uh, the It was called the Laurentum. Let me just check. Pliny is here. Laurentium. It was called it was called the Laurentum. His villa was called the Laurentum, and he had two villas that he spoke about the most, but the one that he spoke the most of is his villa that's called Laurentum. Now, in his villa, he says that he was really happy about his villa, and he's really proud of his villa, and he says that he deserves it because of the work that he's doing. Unlike Horace, which he's really thankful, and he's showing lots of gratefulness and gratitude, but Pliny, he is very proud of it, and he talks about it in his letters. Now, in Pliny's letters, he write about how his villa looks like. So his villa, the Laurentum, is in a seaside, where there is, in the annex, or there is a room where there are windows. There are different windows in which he can see. Through one window he can see the sea, through one window he can see the greenery, through one window he can see the winds, the air coming inside. And then in his dining room there are two windows in which it is perfectly designed in such a way that in one window, when it's sunrise, the sunrise is visible, and in the other window, when it is sunset, the sunset is visible. So he is enjoying nature in every bit possible in that villa, the Laurentum Villa. And in his Laurentum villa, he also made for himself a study room, which is a little bit separate from. It is in a place where all the sounds are blocked. There is no any sound, not the sound of wind, not the sound of sea, not the sound of waves, nothing. It is completely silent room, and the doors will be closed. And he talks about it, and he says that there is a festival that they celebrate every year. It is called the Festival of something starting with S. It is there in the reading part, by the way. There is a festival every year in which all the people in his villa, all his people are celebrating it. And at that time, he utilizes his study room and stays over there so that he could be away from all the noise and all the sounds and all the disturbing. And then he also talks and he says that there's also a reception in his villa because Pliny, sometimes he even worked in his villa. So he received people, he was in the municipality. So his job was he had to talk to people, listen to their complaints, and try to fix problems. So he even had a reception in his villa where he received people who came up with complaints and he would listen to them. And he also said that at times he brought in his work, and he also did his work in his villa at times. So for Pliny, his villa was also a place where he could escape from the city, from the work, where he could spend his time in doing things that he liked, in intellectual activities, in learning about new subjects, in learning about archaeology and in other stuffs. So he's really enjoying his villa. Then then that was it about Pliny, and that was all about all these three the literary evidences of what these people wrote about their villas. And now we are going to see art. We are going to see evidences from art. So let's see. Here it says that from the archaeological remains, there are many archaeological remains of Roman villas to be studied, both in Italy and across the Roman Empire. So there are many villas that they found from the Roman Empire, that is in Italy and in the Roman Empire. These show that somewhere more like working farms where life have had some of the simplicity advocated by Horace, but others reveal a much more sophisticated lifestyle dedicated to leisure. So there were two types of villas. There is the working villa, where there was work going on in it, and there is a villa that is completely for pleasure and for leisure. So the one that we're going to focus on is the villas that was for the upper class people and was dedicated for leisure only. So we are going to see about them. A secondary theme in this section concerns some visits you can make to villas, raising nothing really important in this part, by the way. So so much has failed to survive that we can only get a partial picture from archaeology. There may be many villa sites to be explored, but often little remains at them. Some, for example, along the coast of the Bay of Naples, have been lost beneath later buildings, and we only know that they were ever existed because of written accounts. So uh, there are no much archaeological remains from Roman villas. It is very less. And the ones that were found, it was of the highly luxurious villas that were only dedicated for leisure. So the ones that were in the Bay of Naples, there is a place called Bay of Naples where Pliny's villa was. So there were, they have found evidences from there, but they did not find much evidences because most of the villas over there were rebuilt and built upon. It was broken down and built upon. So there are no much archaeological record of Roman villa. It is also the case that archaeology, like other sources, may reveal more about subjects than others. In the context of leisure, it tends to privilege the wealthy, whose lifestyle left more enduring traces. Now, the wealthy people in their villas, there were so many, definitely there are going to be many things over there. So there were some things that was retrieved from the villas of these luxurious people. All the objects used in menial work, like pots and wine pressers, survived in large numbers. So items like pots and wine pressers, they were found in large numbers in these areas where they looked for Roman villa evidences, and items that was used by the by the servants and by the slaves. It was found very, very, very rarely and very less. So, in short, more archaeological evidence survives for the few for whom the villa was a place of leisure than for the many who labored there. Like literature, it tells far more about what leisure meant for the rich and educated. So here also they're saying that the evidences that are remained today are just about it is just about the high luxurious people that spend their time in the villas. It is there are no much archaeological remains left from the slaves and from the working people who worked in those villas. So that is what it is said over here, that there is very less archaeological remains, and from what is available, it is all about high upper class people. And what did they find most? They found pots and wine pressers the most. Now, evidence from villa art. We are going to see art. What kind of evidences we can find in art? So, to answer the question about what leisure meant to wealthy villa owners, one useful source of evidence is the art chosen to decorate their rooms and gardens, wall paintings, mosaic pavements, sculptures, etc. Even though relatively little survives, it can give fascinating insights into how villa owners thought about leisure and what they wanted from it. Given the traditional values attached to leisure by educated classes, it is not surprising to find a frequent emphasis on serious cultural pursuits and on the appreciation of natural pleasures such as gardens and sea vistas. So here they're saying that even though there is no much archaeological remains of these art, but whatever is there, it gives us good deal of information. And in Roman time, in the Roman villas, there were a lot of art pieces used to decorate in their villas. It could be paintings, it could be mosaic pavements, like the ceramic on the floor, but it was designed. It was very detailedly designed, and there were wall paintings and there were sculptures that they used in their villas to decorate it. So we can understand what kind of leisure they were looking for through these art that they used to decorate their villas. Now, they used different things. Maybe they decorated their villas with natural stuffs. Maybe to enhance the nature, to enjoy the nature even more. Maybe they decorated their villas with cultural stuffs, which they to show their respect to the type of culture they're following. It could be decorated in a way where they show their appreciation and respect to people who they love the most, or people who they worship, like goddess and goddesses and myths, etc. So this is also unsurprising, since villas were part of the social competition that their elite residents brought with them from the city, and interior decoration played a prominent part in this. So for these elite people, the interior decoration played a very important part. In this section, we shall look first at some examples of such decorations from some Italian seaside villas. So we are going to look into some examples of the Italian seaside villas. And there is also some we're also going to see about some other villas that was there in Britain, that was taken by the British people, the design and everything, and they started building villas in Britain. So they were copying the designs, and they started taking the idea, the concept over there in Britain as well. So we are going to see those villas as well. Now, the natural beauty at the Bay of Naples led to wealthy Romans to build lavish leisure homes there. Although few survive, we can get some idea of their art from houses in nearby towns that were preserved under volcanic lava after the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 CE. So, uh, the Bay of Naples was considered to be a very beautiful natural place, and most of the Roman elite, the higher upper class people, they built their villas in the Bay of Naples. So it was by the seaside, and it was a very beautiful natural environment where they built their villas. So even though they built their villas over there, they also decorated it even more with natural stuffs to enhance the beauty of nature. We are going to talk about that even more over here. So as we shall see now, two themes were prominent: enjoying of nature and of the heritage of classical learning and mythology. So the kind of art that was there, it was for enjoying the nature, and the heritage of classical learning, it could be for classical learning, and also mythology, like the Greek gods, the Roman gods, etc. So these were the three types of art that they used in their villas when they decorated. It depends which one had what type of belief. Now, first, we are going to see nature and landscape, how they used art and how they decorated their villas using nature and landscape paintings. So, since Roman villas were often built in places of great natural beauty, it is not surprising to see an appreciation of nature reflected in the art that decorated them. Paintings could bring the refreshment of the garden indoors, useful when it was too hot to relax in the real garden outside. Um, while a painting, okay, so what they're trying to say over here, that even though the Roman villas were built in places where there was very beautiful natural beauty, they also decorated it even more with artificial decorations interiorly with nature, like how maybe they got some garden paintings internally inside their villas, where they could, at times when they felt really hot, to enjoy the weather outside in in the real garden, they would spend the time indoors, where they could even enjoy it with the paintings of nature, with orchids, with plants, indoor plants, and etc. But its trellises, pergolas, and fountains, now these are the stuffs that they used, make another important point about the natural world in relation to the ideals of the villa. The idea that its beauties could be enhanced even further by man-made features. So they used man-made features to enhance the beauty of nature even more in their villas. Even though it had really beautiful place, they even wanted to make it even more beautiful, but with man-made features. They used garden ornaments to design, and they also to design the grounds, and even the situation of the villa itself are all aspects of its intervention, which has wider significance in relation to man's control over the natural world. So they're just talking about the main important point that they're talking about over here is that even though the Roman villas were built in a very beautiful natural place, the Romans, they wanted to enhance the natural beauty even more, and they used man-made features like garden ornaments, like pergolas and fountains, nature paintings, etc., to even make their villas look more beautiful with nature. So at times when they it was really hot outside and they couldn't spend their time outside in the garden, they would be inside, but they would have the feeling that they are outside with all the decoration that they're having that is related to nature. Nature and buildings can be seen in another popular subject, landscape paintings of villas themselves, which often appeared as vignettes. So I'm not going to read this part because when I read, it's going to create a confusion. But what they're trying to say over here is that even they decorated their villas by painting of their own villa. So they would call an artist to come and paint their villa and add all the natural elements in it. And they use these paintings to put it inside their own villas where they enjoyed the view even more. They made sure that the architecture was shown very beautifully. The natural beauty was being shown very beautifully. They made sure that everything blended together, the seaside atmosphere, the natural elements, the architecture of the villa, how the villa was built. All these things was really important, and they wanted that their villa should be portrayed very beautifully, and they use that landscape painting, and they used to keep it inside their own villa. So that is what is it over here. They use their landscape paintings of their own villa to decorate their own villas. And there is another kind of painting called the sacro idyllic, where it is a pastoral setting of it's a particular setting in which the artists would paint. So they also use that style of painting to decorate their own villa. So that is it about in here. A spectacular example of art used to enhance natural surrounding has been found at Spurlonga. Now, this is an example. Okay, we heard that okay, they decorated their stuffs with nature, with paintings, with man-made elements that even made nature look more enhanced. Now, where is the example? This is an example that you can use when you are writing about the nature, the natural art. So, a spectacular example of art used to enhance natural surroundings has been found at Sperlonga on the west coast of Italy, south of Rome and north of Naples, near a seaside villa associated with Emperor Tiberius. Here, a natural grotto in the cliffs was extended to from a dining room with an island dining area and was decorated with several large sculptures depicting episodes from Homer's Odyssey. The statues were found as fragments but have been reconstructed. So I'm going to show you how it looks like. This is the figure. So there is a villa, okay? I don't know if it is inside here or if it is over there, but it's in the seaside. And they made the villa so big, they extended it, that they built so many sculptures over here. They used this area as dining area, and this is the view of grotto. They made a grotto. This is what a grotto is, and they made so many sculptures. They decorated it, and they also made this area as a dining area. So this is the example, and this is how it looks like. So when you are writing, you can write this example, and this would be enough. Now 3.5. Now this is 3.5. So inside, this is a pellico reconstruction of the sculptural displays per longa, reproduced with the permission of whatever are okay. This is a name. So they made such kind of statues. You see these statues. These are the kind of statues that they made inside, and it was kind of showing the episode of Odyssey. Odyssey is something I don't really know about. I think it's a kind of literature. So they were showing episodes of Odyssey. And that is it for the example. Now 3.5 is a dramatic illustration of just how far wealthy villa owners would go in converting the natural environment to serve their leisure needs. It was not enough just to enjoy the natural view. Instead, they wanted to control and improve it through man-made art, which particularly in this case exemplified the other aspects of leisure for Roman elites, their heritage of classical culture and mythology. Guests at Sperlonga would have known that ancient traditions and literature set some of Odysseus' adventures on this coast, and surrounded by these statues, they might have felt as if they were dining in the company of true local heroes. So Odyssey is a kind of literature, a story of someone, I guess. And the episodes in Sperlonga, in the villa over there, in the grotto, they used these sculptures, and they decorated the place with all these sculptures, and it was also built as a dining room. So the guests, or whoever came, and whoever came and they were eating over there, they were even feeling as if the people from Odyssey is also present over there with them. So this is an example that shows that how far the wealthy, high upper class people would go to spend to make sure that their villa is meeting all their leisure needs, and they are connecting their leisure with myths, with the cultural, with with the classical culture and mythology. So this is an example that can be used, a very good example of Sperlonga, where a grotto is built, and there is statues of Odysseus episodes, man-made sculptures, and a natural place where people, the elite, went and they went and dined there. So this was it about the nature and landscape. The most important point over here is that the Roman, they really enjoyed the natural view, and they made sure that their villa is in a very beautiful natural place. And even though it had a great natural beauty, they tried to enhance it even more with man-made features like garden ornaments, like fountains, like paintings, and they even decorated the inside of the interior of their villas with nature paintings, with landscape paintings of their own villas, and they made sure that that it blended really well, that in the painting, in the landscape of their own villa, that all the features of their villa is explicited well, and people could see it and enjoy it very much. And then there is an
Sorry, Nahla. Could you just mark the lines, the important lines of any paragraph?
important lines. uh,
Yeah,
okay, but you know, when I'm trying to underline it, it will go, but anyways, I will try to do it, no problem.
it's okay. Just do it in the next paragraphs.
Okay, sure. So that was it about this part. I'm not able to go down. That was it about this part. But what would I say you is that this first part is, you know, there is if you read it, you will be able to, you know, connect the points together. So I will underline it from the next part for sure, no problem. But I would recommend you to still read all of it. Now we are going to see images from the classical mythology and high culture, how through art they express their classical mythology and high culture. Uh, we are not going to read more in detail over here because it is so many examples over here, and we don't need this much examples, because when we are going to write, we are going to write a small section about it. What you need to know about this part is that the Romans, they were also portraying their high culture, their culture about myth, through sculptures, through art, through paintings in their villas, inside their villas, or in the interior and exterior of their villas. They made sure, you know, in different villas there is Bacchus, the god of wine, Ariadne, the heroine with whom he fell in love. So different people, they used different mythological characters, different Greek gods, different Roman gods, different people whom they loved the most, and they made sculptures of them, and they kept it in their own villas. So this is what you need to remember about the classical mythology and high culture. These are all examples over here. All of this are examples over here, from which you just need to take one or two examples. You don't have to take all of these examples. The examples over here is the now you see, for instance, the panel in the center of the wall depicts two famous lovers, Bacchus and Ariadne. But mythological subjects could also offer particular intellectual and moral spiritual themes, and they were often depicted in thematic groups for viewers to ponder. So these mythological characters, these high culture art, it provided them with intellectual, moral, and spiritual themes. So I would not talk more about this because that is what is what is needed to be written down, and you can just take any one example from here. There are so many examples over here. Like, there were people who made statues of Plato. There were people who made statues of Bacchic. There were people who made statues of Diana. So everyone made of the god Venus. So according to whom they followed, they made sculptures of those Greek gods, of those influential people, and they made sure it is there in their villa. Um, that is what you need to remember from that part. Sculpture shows a similar predominance of subjects from myth or high culture, chosen particularly to decorate rooms dedicated to the more intellectual aspects of leisure, such as reading or study. So they used these sculptures and decorated it in areas where it was dedicated to learning and studying, where they read and where they did their intellectual activities the most. Like maybe their library at that time, I don't know if they called it a library, but the place where they did their reading, the place where they did their intellectual activities. So they used these sculptures in those places where it was dedicated to reading and studying. Portraits of great intellectuals of the past, images of muses, and copies of famous artistic masterpieces were especially popular. So these kind of art pieces, other than sculptures, such as images, paintings of famous artistic masterpieces, were also used and decorated in their villas in the places where it was dedicated for studying and for reading. Examples of all of these were found in great collection of statues in the villa of the Papyri at Herculaneum, including a bronze bust of philosopher Epicurus. So you can use this example. This example is a simple one, an easy one, not too complicated. And that is example of all of these were found in the great collection of statues of Villa of the Papyri at Herculaneum, including the bronze bust of the philosopher Epicurus. So you can use this example for explaining about the sculptures of sculptures of people, Greek gods, of culture that was used, paintings, any type of art that was connected to culture. It was used in their villas. They decorated it in the areas that was dedicated to studying and to reading. So example is a great collection found statues that was found in the villa of Papyri at Herculaneum, including a bronze bust of philosopher Epicurus. So this is a perfect example that you can use when you are talking about the Greek mythology and how they use these sculptures. I will just mark it over here in my book as well. Okay. So this was particularly appropriate because the villa housed a specialist library of text relating to Epicurean philosophy. Now, this villa, the Villa of Papyri, it had a big library that was related to the Epicurean philosophy, and there were a lot of books and maybe manuscripts of Epicurean philosophy. So that's why they kept an Epicurean sculpture over there. Okay, so now we are going to sum up these themes, and we're going Brading Villa. By the way, there is another type of villa called is the Brading Roman Villa. We're going to see about that. So far, this discussion of themes of nature and high culture in art has focused on villas around Naples, which belong to the first centuries BCE and CE. But to conclude, we shall look at the floor mosaics that were used about 300 or 400 years later to decorate a Romano-British villa. So now there is Romano-British villas that was there in Britain, Roman style villas that was being built in Britain. After 300 years ago, 300 years later, when the original villas in Roman were 300 years later, they used these Romano-British villas were built, and they were using floor mosaics to decorate the floor. So we're going to see about that. The reason for making this move is to enable us to consider greater depth and onsight of some of the questions that surround the use of surviving artwork as evidence for attitudes to leisure in a villa. After all, this material can only work effectively if it is carefully analyzed and evaluated. So this just shows that to what extent people are going and what kind of things are giving them leisure. Um, that was it about the Romano-British villas, that the mosaic floor mosaics were used in the Romano-British villa. Now, evidence about villa buildings, visiting a place like Brading with its many well-preserved mosaics can give a real immediacy to the values that Romans attached to life at the villa. We can also get a good idea of the layout of the building and see sense of activity which it supported. Future archaeological investigations may be able to tell us more. So they are telling that these floor mosaics are very well done, that it relates to the Roman life, and it is showing a kind of relationship with the Roman life, even though it is there in Britain. And there's still archaeologists are still studying these mosaics, and they can tell us even more further. So unfortunately, many other villa sites are far less informative, usually because they have been largely destroyed or have not been fully excavated. Systematic excavation is one of the most effective means of revealing evidence for villa buildings, but even so, there can be problems arising from misguided investigations in the past or limits as to what we can dug or not. So they're saying that still we don't have much evidences. It is either that the villas are being destroyed, or that still it is not found, or still it's not excavated, and maybe some information delivered to us before was wrong, and maybe some of it is misguided. So there is a lot of controversy going on in these topics. It can be hard to give an accurate account of the villa's layout or changing usage over time. So it is very difficult to show how a Roman villa actually looked like in its architecture, how it was laid out, how it was actually built. It is very difficult to actually come up with the design of how Roman villas were actually built at that time, because of the misguided information, because of the very little archaeological remains, because of very little evidences. We're not able to actually find out how it was built and how it was set out, how was the layout of these Roman villas. So, supplement, where were we? So, to get a fuller picture of villa buildings as places for leisure, we can try to supplement the archaeological information with evidences from other sources. So, now what are we going to do? We are going to take the evidences we have from archaeology, and we are going to try to relate it with literature and see if they match or if they don't match. What is written in literature, does it matches with what archaeologists found? We're going to check that. Then we are going to check the art that was portrayed in the villas, the art that they got, and the archaeology, the things that archaeologists found. Do they match together? Do they relate to each other, or they don't? We're going to see that now. So far, I would just like to summarize everything until now before we go to the relating part. First, there's about the nature and landscape, where they used nature, and they used, even though the Roman villas were placed in very beautiful natural places, they used man-made features to decorate it even more, through sculptures, through paintings, through ornaments, to satisfy their leisure needs. And they also used high culture, classical decorations, where they made sculptures of the Greek gods, where they made sculptures of influential people, and they made paintings of these of high intellectual people, high culture, and they mainly used it to decorate their room where they learned and where they studied and where they read. um, And then there is an example of villa of Papyri at Herculaneum, where there is even the bronze bust of philosopher Epicurus is also over there. Then we saw that there is the Brading Roman villas, the Romano-British villas, which used mosaics, flooring mosaics. They used mosaics to decorate the floors of their villas, and how the way these mosaics were built, it was showing a relationship with the Roman villas. Then we saw that there is very less evidences remaining, and the evidences that we have, it could be misguided, it is incomplete, we don't have much information. So how are we going to know that the information we have is right or not? So now we're going to compare, we're going to see what we have from literature and what we found from archaeology. Are they matching together? Are they relating to each other or not? We're going to again see how the paintings, the art that is found, and the archaeological founds, are they matching together or they're not? That's what we are going to see now. The first of these examples involves the paintings of seaside villas, in which, as we noted earlier, nature and buildings appear to blend. Here, our question concerns the realism of the architecture. How far does this fit with the archaeological evidence for some contemporary buildings? So they are going to check the the paintings of these villas, and they're going to compare it with the actual archaeological findings of the villa, and they're going to see if they actually match, and how true it is, how true the information is. Now look again at there are here there is some paintings which is not given over here. I don't know why. So there is a painting of Stabby villas from Stabby, and these three paintings show the characteristics of the villa. It shows the size of the villa. It shows the how big it is, how widespread it is, and how enclosed gardens it is having, and private jetties and the porticos. So it's showing the details of the villa. It's showing the details of the villas in Stabby. So we're talking about the villas in Stabby. So the paintings, it shows the size of the houses, the extensive buildings, the wider landscape in the sea, the enclosed gardens or face on the private jetties, then the porticos. So it is showing all these features in the paintings of Stabby villas. So these particular characteristics, size, setting, and porticos, are the kind of tangible features that can be checked out against the archaeological evidences. So these kind of stuff, like the size of the villa, the setting, how it was set, the porticos are, the main gates, the front gates, how they are designed. Those are the porticos. I'm going to show you what a portico is. So you see, these are the porticos. It's like a small balcony type outside of the house. You see, these are called the porticos. So they're checking all these. They're checking the porticos. They're checking the size. They're checking so many stuffs, and they are actually trying to find out if how the paintings portray the villas, and how actually archaeologists found them, are they matching together or not? So you can use this example, the paintings from the Stabby villas, and the comparing their size, extensive buildings, etc. And then here there is details of how the architecture was built, the vertical lines, the horizontal lines, even the degrees. So if you want, you can learn it. If you don't want, it's not really necessary. You can just explain and say that the archaeological drawings are actually matching with the paintings that was found of the Stabby villas. So we're just going to read this part of it, that I think you will agree instantly confirms that the paintings do show some of the main architectural features of real life seaside villas in the area. The Villa San Marco is large and rambling, has several porticos, and is on the seafront. The large reception room open to the seaside terrace, not represented here. In this case, the evidence of paintings and archaeology confirm each other. So at the end, we came to a conclusion that yes, the paintings, the archaeological paintings of the villas are actually matching with the archaeology, with what archaeologists has found of these villas, the sizes, the number of porticos, the features, the gates, the windows, etc. It is actually matching with archaeology and it confirms each other. So yes, the paintings can be true, and an example is the San Marco Villa. The number of porticos, the size, the setting actually matches the archaeological painting. So it confirms, the painting confirms the archaeology and the archaeology confirms the painting. So both of them are true. Now we're going to see how true the literature and archaeology is. How are we going to understand that the literature is true and the archaeology of it is true or not? So we're going to finish, by the way, there's nothing more here relating to literature. But when we turn now to look at a particular example from literature, the situation is more complex. Pliny's description of his seaside villa at Laurentum, that's the name of his villa, has had a great influence on the study of Roman villas and also on how villas were designed in other periods and places. But the process of relating it to archaeological remains raises some important questions about combining different sources of evidence in the quest to picture antiquity. So uh, there is a lot of complexity to actually take the literature evidences as true evidences, because it is written by people and they wrote it in a way that they wanted to describe it. So we cannot actually take these literature evidences as true evidences for how the villas were actually, the architecture of the villa was. We can understand that it was there by the seaside, the wind was good, the smell was beautiful, the nature was beautiful, but we don't know the size of the architecture, how big it was, the exact measurements, the where the porticos were, where the windows are, where the garden was, exactly the architecture, the layout. We are not able to understand through literature. But through paintings, we can understand the architecture, how the villas were built. But through literature, we cannot. The first question concerns how far literary accounts are reliable as a basis for reconstructing ground plans and evaluation of houses. In general, this depends on the purpose of the written text and the accuracy and detail of its observations. But if the question is asked specifically about Pliny's villa, then the answer has to be that his description has only a limited use. For, as you have already seen, despite all its vivid detail, it did not set out to give an accurate account of the villa's layout. Drawing up a definite plan on the basis of Pliny's description is therefore out of the question. So Pliny, he did write a lot about his villa. He wrote how beautiful it is and what he did over there, and what he did in each room and the setting of the rooms and etc. But it did not give much information of how the architecture or how the villa was set up, what was the layout of the villa, how the villa was set, how it was designed, how it was built, what is the measurements. They don't know anything about that. So even if now architectures or people would want to reconstruct a villa that looked like Pliny's, they will not be able to do it because they don't have enough evidences to actually make it happen. Even so, many architectures and historians from at least the 17th century have been inspired by Pliny's first-hand description to attempt reconstructions of his villa, or even to use it as an ideal template for houses of their own. As a result, Pliny's villa has been recreated in many different versions, and these in turn can be used to help us to picture it. Furthermore, these variations are a reminder of just how many different interpretations there can be of the same piece of ancient evidence. So, Pliny, there was no much evidence through his literature, through his letters, that architectures and builders could use to make villas that looked like Pliny's villas. Even though there were less evidences, architectures and builders, they did made different versions of what they thought would look like Pliny's villa, and different architectures made different villas that they thought would look like Pliny's villas. So there are several villas that is reconstructed that might look like Pliny's villa. Still, we don't know about that. Now turn to Pliny's Villa at Laurentum on the DVD. We're not going to read this part. It's just an activity for us to do. And we're going to read from here. A second important question in relating literary accounts to surviving archaeological remains concerns the identification of specific sites. Is it possible to find Pliny's actual villa among the remains of at Laurentum on the coast south of Rome? Although some skeptical scholars have suggested his description might have been a complete fiction, others have argued that Pliny was so specific in his account that he probably was describing a real house. So there is a controversial discussion going on among people, among archaeologists and scholars. So there are scholars who say that Pliny made it all up. He actually gave descriptions of a villa that never existed. But some people say that no, Pliny was very detailed about what he wrote, and the way he wrote about his villas actually show that there was a villa at that time, and he was describing a real house. And since that part of the coast is dotted with the remains of Roman luxury homes, there might be a good chance of finding a site that would match his description. Even so, there has been no conclusive identification so far, since none of the different sites suggested has completely fitted the written account. What's more, this archaeological search has been beset with many of the usual problems mentioned earlier, with sites made hard to investigate because of later overbuilding or destruction. So now they're thinking that, oh, maybe they will be able to find Pliny's villa, but they did not find it until now, according to the descriptions that Pliny wrote about his villa. They still couldn't find it out, but they're saying that maybe they will be able to find it someday, because there's so much destruction, there's so much building, they destroyed many villas and they built new ones. So they are not sure if they will be able to find the actual villa of Pliny. Yet it is also the case that the kinds of questions that are being asked of villa sites and of many other material remains have changed. A reminder of the constantly shifting relationship between the past and the present. So here they're just saying that there is a lot of change happening in the world, and the villa sites have changed. It's not the same anymore. The nature is changed. Maybe the seaside is no more, it's drained out, maybe like it has been changed until now. And there is no much archaeological remains, there is no much ancient text, and still people are trying to learn from the literature that was left at that time, and they're trying to identify, they're still trying to find villas, the Roman villas, and trying to learn more about it for its own sake, just because they want to, and not to find out Pliny's villa, not to find out Horace's villa, just because they love archaeology, they love history, and they want to do it. So nothing really important in this part. There's nothing that we could use in writing in our essay. Now, epilogue: Roman villas in later centuries. The ideals of leisure that shaped villa life for rich and educated Romans were also espoused by leaders of later societies, and especially in the 18th century Britain. They made references in design and decoration of their houses to the art and architecture of Roman villas. As they knew about this from archaeology and classical literature, and especially from the letters of Pliny. So later on, by the 18th century, so many other countries, they started copying the idea of Roman villa, and they started decorated their own houses, their own villas with the ideas, the concepts of Roman villa. And they got inspiration through Pliny's letters, through archaeological remains, through literary concepts, and that's how they used what these were the things that they used to build their own houses in Roman style. Their main purpose in doing this was usually to promote their own authority in terms that were familiar in a society heavily imbued with classical culture, but many of them were so motivated by genuine antiquarian interest. So some people, they did this because they wanted to show the classical culture. They wanted to show how interested they are in the classical culture, and some people did that to show that they were interested in the antique, in the old decorations, and they had antique interest. A leading example, an example is Lord Burlington, a British who was a great patron at the arts and the classical scholar between 1726 and 1729. He built an addition to his house at Chiswick, known as Chiswick House. It was intended to be a place for cultural leisure time pursuits, as many Roman villas had been, and its building and grounds had many features based on Roman models, including conscious reference to Pliny and his villa. So, an example of British people building Roman villa-based designs in Britain is Lord Burlington. He built a villa called has in his house at Chaswick. It was known as Chiswick, and it was a place for cultural leisure time pursuits, as many Roman villas. It was basically following the idea of Roman villa. So that was it. All together, this chapter is over. Alhamdulillah, it was. I hope that I made it easy and it was not complicated. I hope that you were able to understand this part, because for me, it took me several times to read it, to listen to the lectures, to actually understand these parts, because it was complicated. But I tried my best to explain it in the most easiest way, and I hope that it helped. That was it about this chapter. I will stop.